John. Oh, God, that's so funny. You know I'm not ticklish. John, July is here, and it's time for fireworks.
Okay.
Continental soccer tournaments and the summer games.
Oh, man.
I don't know. No. Feels like maybe that wasn't a specific national anthem, but Knockaround has the sunglasses you need to make the most of it. They've been making high-quality shades that don't break the bank since 2005. Mm-hmm. They've actually been our personal go-tos for years.
Years and years and years. And you know what, Dave? Mm-hmm. With over 25 different frame styles, there's something for the whole family, including tons of kids' pairs.
Yeah.
Right? So whether you're looking to rock some red, white, and blues for the Independence Day, or cheer on the Stars and Stripes on the pitch track, court, pool, whatever.
Nice.
Yeah. Are there any other ones?
Give me a second.
Bocce ball court?
There we go.
Knockaround has you covered.
All their lenses have UV 400 protection, and with polarized adult pairs starting at $28, you can get a few pairs to leave in your car, toss in your beach bag, or just chunk at your neighbor's yards.
Or just chuck in other people's cars.
That's true. Yeah.
Windows are down.
They're
so cheap and affordable. Dave, let me tell you something. Let me make you a promise here. Okay?
Whoa,
let's say it's the 90th minute, right? The U.S. team, about to upset Argentina. All right?
Yes.
You'll probably see me wearing my red, white, and blue, my brand new red, white, and blue knockarounds. And I don't care if I'm in the house and it's raining outside. I'm not taking those things off.
You know what? You've gone rogue, John. That's just what I respect about you. You throw convention out the window. Or in this case, you may throw some shades into a window. That's a callback,
there we
John.
go.
Same here, okay? I probably won't take mine off all summer. Dadville fans, don't squint. Don't squint. You know what you're saying. Through the summer's festivities, check out knockaround.com and use code DADVILLE15 for 15% off your order.
That's DADVILLE15 for 15% off your order at knockaround.com.
Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with...
Birds and Bees. John.
Hey, Dave.
Oh, yeah, I thought we were singing, but no, you go.
No, I'm not in the singing mood until I get something off my chest. Okay. I need to talk to the people for a second.
Can I listen?
Yeah. Would you mind taking a knee real quick?
Thank you.
Okay. People, it's important to Dave and I that the supplements that we take are of the highest quality. Okay? And that's why for many years, we both have been drinking AG1. Yeah, I wanted to say it slowly like that, okay? Unlike many supplemental brands, AG1 is researched and developed by an in-house team of scientists, doctors, and nutritionists with decades of experience in their respective fields.
I don't say this much, but you're right, John.
Go ahead.
So many people have asked us if AG1 is the real deal, and trust
me,
there's a reason why we've been doing it so long.
You know what? One word, Dave.
What?
Quality. Okay, quality for AG1 isn't just a buzzword or a ding word like that ding.
There it is.
It's a commitment backed by expert-led scientific research, high-quality ingredients, industry-leading manufacturing, and rigorous testing. At each step of the process, AG1 goes above and beyond industry standards.
We know we can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because they obsess, that's all they talk about, over product quality, standards of manufacturing partners, and sustainable practices.
All the time. Guys, taking care of our health shouldn't be complicated, and AG1 simplifies this by covering our nutritional bases, to use a sports term, and setting ourselves up for success in just 60 seconds. I can do it in like less than 50, but making it so that there aren't a million different pills to keep track of. Just one scoop of AG1 mixed in water every day.
AG1's ingredients are heavily researched for efficacy and quality. And we love that every scoop also includes rhodiola and B vitamins for energy support.
We've partnered with AG1 for so long because they make such a high-quality product that we genuinely look forward to drinking every day.
So if you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs.
The places you'll go.
The places you'll go. With your first subscription at drinkag1.com/Dadville.
That's drinkag1.com/Dadville.
So here we go. I think
Our personalities are going
in.
to change drastically.
It's just you guys are going to be so impressed.
We're
with how
ready.
professional. Okay, so here at Dadville, this is a big moment. We have Birds and Bees with us. We are excited about this. We have known about what you guys doing for a while, and the powers have finally converged. We've come together, and I think our hope by the end of this is that everything will be figured out. That we, the four of us, have collectively
We
solved.
will not be confused anymore, Dave and I.
Yeah, that's yes, that's including John and I. Like we may have questions about this whole subject too. So let me kind of introduce everybody to the two of y'all. So here's the bios. Y'all have bios. It's the greatest thing ever. Okay, so Mary Flo, the Birds and Bees founder, Mary Flo Ridley, has been passionately sharing this message all over the world for 30 years. Mary Flo and her husband Dave, great name, godly
Solid
name,
name,
have been married for 40 years. They have 3 married children, 8 grandchildren. After growing up in El Paso, which means the pass, Mary Flo graduated from SMU. She loves playing with her grandchildren, baking, and traveling. Dun, 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 dun. If you want to send some Annie and I and John and I enjoy eating baking things. So if you feel the Lord move in your heart to send some confections,
Careful. I've got something for you.
that's what I was hoping for.
On your way.
Okay, good. Okay, and then Megan Michelson. Yeah, I love that. I just like to give it every pronunciation for those who get judgy. Joined Mary Flo at Birds and Bees almost 6 years ago to help bring this message to a new generation of parents. Megan was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and graduated from Baylor. Let's go. What's the Bears? Don't y'all do the...
Yours, yeah.
There
It's
it
kind
is.
of lame.
There it is. Before diving into the world of sex education, Megan was a middle school teacher. She and her husband Blake have been married for 12 years and have 3 young kids. She's in the trenches of motherhood. I feel that so deeply in my fatherhood way. So happy and so tired. So thank y'all so much for coming on. We are so excited about having y'all. John and I, it's so funny. I imagine this may be a common thing when y'all do these podcasts, but John and I were sitting prepping. We spend usually about a week and a half praying, prepping, and fasting over each episode. And we sort of had this dilemma because it was like, okay, obviously this is a incredibly helpful subject. You know, like everything that you guys special in is just like, it is so helpful. And there's so much material. Like John and I were, watching the videos over the last couple of days, which is amazing, by the way. The curriculum is really great and so well done. I don't know if it's the artist in me, and John, I wonder if you feel this way too, but like, I'm always curious when I sort of like go to the site and I'm like, okay, what is this just going to look like? Like, what is the experience of how the videos look and the music? And I was like, man, you guys, it's
really well
It's
done.
like really well done.
That means a lot coming from you guys. Thank you.
But for real, it's like, because you never know what it's going to look like and how the people shoot it and the lighting and what the background looks like and the music between. And I was like, this has been really thought through. So everybody listening, if you haven't watched it, it's really great. It's super pro. It sounds great. I was just like, it was well done. But the thing that John and I were laughing about, it was like, okay, we have like a million questions each. So it could either be like just Q&A for, this is a 6-hour episode, by the way. So it could be that, or what we landed on, which, I think feels probably the best use of time and for you guys to do what y'all do so well, is to basically have you guys, if you can, sort of give us like the walkthrough, sort of the bullet points of what y'all like to cover, what y'all feel is important, sort of the tenets of what you guys are teaching. And then we'll just like kind of be annoying and just interrupt a lot with a lot of questions, because otherwise it's like John and I literally laughed. Like as we were watching the videos, I would type a question and then one of you would say it. And I was like, okay, they just said, okay.
Well, I feel
we'll
like
fix that.
all of my questions, quote unquote questions, I realized halfway through, I'm like, I'm just writing down things that they said.
And I'm like, oh, I should say that. I'm like, well, why would I say that? Just let them say it.
Yeah. So if y'all don't mind, is there a way that y'all could kind of, for us and the hundreds of millions of people listening, could y'all just sort of like walk through sort of the main pieces of what y'all like to teach and help people understand? And like I said, we do have some questions about those things that we'll kind of potentially awkwardly interject as you guys are walking through.
And last thing for the listener, this is an actual course that you guys have on your site.
That's right.
That Dave and I went
right.
through that we'll be going through.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We can do that. Do you want to kind of do
I just see y'all's eyes roll back and you go into like auto mode. You're just kind of like, here we go. Like,
no, we're ready. We're ready. We're flexible. Okay, well, first of all, thank you all for having us. We are thrilled. I am obviously the older person in the room. And so actually my grown kids were just so jealous that I get to be with you all today.
So kind.
Of yours. And anyway, it's been I've become more popular with my children.
It's really is an assist
we
from
take
us.
what we
We're just
can
trying
get
to help.
as parents.
Okay, so birds and bees. This is a strategy for parenting in the realm of sex education. And basically the old way of doing things was if you got any conversation at all with your parents, you got the talk. Mm-hmm. And you got that awkward conversation at the awkward age, which is not a good combination.
Right.
And so as a young mother, I thought, could this be better? And basically broke down that talk. I grew up in a family where the word sex was never said. Mm-hmm. It rhymed with sex. My parents wouldn't have said it. And it was not.
There was no Czech cereal in the house.
Yeah, you're cutting out a lot of great things.
And so I was coming from, I don't know what this looks like, but I just know this is not going to work. Mm-hmm. And my children were asking questions. Mommy, how did that baby get out of there? And I thought, I know, but can I tell you? Yeah. Like, will you be institutionalized if I talk to you as a young child? I don't know. And so, but basically broke down the talk into lots of little conversation so that are actually answering your children's questions as they come instead of saying, I'll tell you later. It's like, well, let's talk about that now. But before you have all those conversations, what we like to encourage at Birds and Bees is the first step, which is you need a message. You need to know what is the main thing I want my children to know about sex if they're growing up in my family. Because the values that we add to the basic biology are going to vary from family to family, right? Like no two families are exactly the same. And so we, in our workbook, which I don't know if you've gotten the chance to look through, but we really help parents hone in on answering that question. What are our strongly held beliefs? What are our values? What are our hopes for our children? And how can we define where we're going with these conversations? What's the purpose of these conversations? And so for Dave and I, when we went through that, the message that we came
Husband Dave.
I
was going to say, I don't remember that conversation, but sure, I'm here.
To clarify.
Yeah.
We came up with the message, sex is a gift from God intended for marriage. So we wanted to, throughout these conversations, be able to point to the gift, to point to the beauty, to point to the boundaries, which are marriage and intended for marriage, and also be able to reinforce that with all of the things that we talk about, whether it's birth or conception or seeds and eggs and all of the things we're talking about. We're going somewhere. We're not just reacting. Mom, I heard this word today. We're not just reacting to what they might bring home. We're actually getting ahead of the story by having a really clear message of what we want to talk about. So coming up with that message is a critical first step because all of your conversations are going in that direction.
What are some of the, like if you think about messages, I mean, obviously you just said that you're in Dave's, but like what are the different ones y'all have heard or y'all that for people listening would go, oh, okay, I see how that kind of gets structured.
Well, if you aren't including your faith, then you might say sex is a beautiful act between two adults.
Well, there was one that one of you referenced in the course where someone bumped into you in the grocery store and they were like, yeah, we took the course, our, whatever it's called, mission statement or whatever it is,
sex is like that like outlet over there. Like if you touch it, you will die.
Yes.
And you're like, okay.
Yes. So the dad listeners would like to say, sex is like that plug over there. You touch, you die.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a clear message.
That's the message for now. We'll revisit when you're 30, and we might revise.
Fear-based, it works, and a lot of people have used that.
Yeah.
Whether they meant to or not. But yes, so that's where we free up families to adapt the curriculum to their family. In other words, this is not a curriculum where it's so cookie cutter that you have to say exactly what we say. We're giving you prompts. We're giving you examples of where this might come up in your family, but you make it your own through this mission statement or message. And, even like couples sometimes don't know how to talk about sex with each other.
Right.
So it's a good foundation for you all to have these conversations prior to really talking to your kids, so you can talk to each other and you know where you're coming from. And you may not be on the same page on every single thing, but at least you know where you're coming from, and you can work that out yourselves.
And know where you're going.
And you know where you're going.
With all the conversations. The family message kind of helps give you a game plan, we think, where it's like, okay, when they ask you these questions, and even more so when the kids get a little older and they start asking really fun questions, it's like, okay, this is kind of our end goal. This is what we believe sex is. This is what our family believes. And again, we've said this before, but it's going to sound different for every family. If it's a faith-based message and understanding of sex, you're going to use words like God and husband and wife. But we are believers, but we don't pretend to think that everyone in our audience is. Yeah. And so we also don't want to think that only Christian parents want to have healthy conversations with their kids about sex.
Sure, yeah.
Well, it's funny. You said something really profound there, both of you gals. It's when you've grown up in the church like I have, and John did too. It's funny. I mean, you're not just having this conversation with your kids, but I mean, this is, if you are married and navigating that space, it's a conversation you have with your spouse too. And I think one of the things that John and I talk about, he and I, we haven't actually navigated this quite yet in Dadville, but like, it's growing up in the church, especially in the 90s and 80s, was like such an interesting, that was never talked about at all. And so, the more I talk to my guy friends who are believers and adults and parents and the whole thing, it's even now, I can feel this like, oh, okay, I need to want to ask Annie this question. Well, here we go. All right. Okay. Hey, so you look beautiful, and I have a question for you. It's like, I can even feel that as an adult. And I know not everybody's like me, but I think like, preacher's kid kind of, and my parents are great. And there was never shame or those kind of things, but it just wasn't talked about. Yeah. And so even now, as a grown man, I have to navigate that now. And so it's really interesting that you say that, because it's not just kids. You're also out there looking at, I would imagine, in church context, a lot of couples who are still navigating that, know?
And I would say I had the same experience. No shame was brought into the house, but nothing was brought into
right.
it just wasn't. So that is one reason, like you probably talk to people who have books, who've written books. And I did write a book a while back, a long time ago. But the benefit, I think, of the course is if you didn't grow up hearing this, like, what does it sound like? What does it sound like to answer the question, well, how did that baby get in there?
Yeah.
You can, in a book, you can write that out, but you don't even know what that sounds like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like reading a song or singing the song.
Yeah.
Right.
You read the lyrics, and
we're not singers, so we're not going to sing.
I was going to ask if y'all would sing something if you prepared something.
I would say in our world, there was a song written 36 years ago, or whenever I started writing all this down. And this is the lead singer right here. She is the lead singer. So,
I'm not a singer.
Yes, no, but it's one thing to see it written down. It's another thing to hear it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, I think, the benefit is you might listen to it and say, I wouldn't say it exactly that way, but that's really close to the way I want to say that.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to give parents the verbal equipment.
John, gosh, you're so tan. You look great.
Thank you. The sun, it's shining. The waves, They're calling.
I hear 'em.
And it's time for fun in the sun. I can't say it enough. But Dave, is your hair ready for the heat?
Ooh.
Okay. Sorry to get real with you here, but is your hair ready? Sun, salt, and SPF can all impact your hair health. So start Nutrafol now to keep your strands feeling strong.
Oh, nice alliteration. John, Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding.
Yeah, no, I know all that. And also, Dave, thinning hair is different for men and women.
Yeah.
So a one-size-fits-all approach, it doesn't cut it to use a hair reference.
That's great.
Thank you. Nutrafol has multiple formulas tailored to give your hair what it needs based on your biology and lifestyle.
Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy and found that 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol's men hair growth supplement for 6 months.
6 months.
And 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol women's hair growth supplement for 6 months.
Yeah, Dave, you're telling me all things I already know. Get results you can run your fingers through.
Ooh,
you get that reference?
Yeah, I do.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off their first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code DADVILLE.
Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code DADVILLE.
That's Nutrafol.com, promo code DADVILLE.
Right here, right now. Baby, I'm nothing down. Hey, speaking of babies, did you...
What?
Were you going to say something?
I was, actually.
Oh.
I just want, for the record, I know the words just for legal reasons. I didn't want us to get in trouble. Dave, let's play a game.
Okay.
Okay, I'll name 2 things, and you tell me which one of those things you'd rather do.
Okay, go.
Okay? Grab a cup of coffee or go to the store to buy diapers.
Coffee.
Okay. Round 2. Watch your favorite TV show or go on a diaper run.
TV show.
Okay. Take a shower and relax or go to the store to get diapers.
Okay, I feel like there's a pattern here. I do not want to go on a diaper run, and especially if the diapers have had runs. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, come on.
You know exactly
well, Dave, listen.
Yeah.
Then you're going to want a subscription to Hello Bello. Named Best Diaper Subscription by New York Magazine and winner of the 2022 Good Housekeeping Parenting Award, Hello Bello will keep you well-stocked on diapers and wipes.
Oh, I love that. That sounds amazing, Johnny. So much so, I'm considering asking Annie if we should have more babies just to get a subscription to Hello Bello. Not really. I don't. That was a joke.
Annie, if you're listening.
No, that's not.
I mean, I think that's where Amy and I are headed, too.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. I was just going with your joke. Amy,
nervous.
I am fine.
Yeah.
We don't need more kids.
Yeah.
Go to hellobello.com/dadville to get 30% off your first customized bundle. Pull your cars over, people. 30% off. And a full-size freebie product of your choice.
Oh, my goodness. Hello Bello, you guys. That's hellobello.com/dadville to start bundling with 30% off your first order.
Don't forget, that's hellobello.com/dadville.
And it feels like you guys have done such a good job, like even in that first video too, of kind of saying, this can start really young and it's these words. And then as we graduate to, an older season of their life, it's these words. And then, which I think is really helpful because I think that's probably what overwhelms me. And I think a lot of parents, it's like, boy, you're coming in screaming hot if you're like using sort of the grown words with the 6-year-old and they're kind of staring at you like, what? Which I thought is really helpful to start that course is to go like, okay, this is how we sort of set this up to go. It's not, this like you're not coming in with the equipment from this age. You're starting at the younger age.
Well, not to jump ahead, but I mean, you do talk about that in the course, the importance of using the actual terms like penis, vagina, which is hard to, even as I say that right now, I'm like, here we go.
This is going to get an E. It's going to get rated.
Pull it together.
Yeah, I know.
No, that is, we are big believers in that. And it's funny, I think now as we're reaching families, that are currently raising their kids, it's like almost more common that's accepted. I think a lot of parents in our generation realize, okay, I've heard that before, or I can say penis without blushing or whatever.
Yeah.
Vagina, I don't know if I can do that, but it's commonly accepted. But when Mary Flo started teaching this, that was usual.
I can't imagine that. Like you say that in a church and they're like, oh,
people still are like, anyways. So that is one of our other steps, and part of the curriculum is the importance of using the anatomically correct word. And I think what's really important is, again, this whole concept of we are trying to get rid of the talk and break it into age appropriate, multiple conversations. And so
it's not just the talk anymore.
It's not the talk. Yeah. And echoing what Dave said, that also frees you up as a parent to say, like, some people might hear, okay, birds and bees, they want you to talk to your kids about sex when they're young. Who are these freaky people? It's like, no. We're saying when they're 2 or 3, talk about, that's your penis. That's a private part. Start with these little conversations and everything builds. And so you don't have that pressure to say every single thing you want them to know when they're 4, because that's inappropriate. But you're slowly establishing yourself as the authority on this topic. And also, as a parent, gaining confidence with that.
Yeah.
I think if you've never said, one of the reasons we want to introduce these words is if you've never said it before, and then boom, at 13 or 14, we decide, okay, this is it. I'm going to tell them everything. And that's the first time your child has heard the words penis and vagina come out of your mouth while you're explaining intercourse. Like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a lot.
A lot at once for anyone. And so what we want to do is kind of help little by little. Is kind of one of our phrases is drip, drip, drip. And so introducing these terms when they're young. So little kids will be silly about private parts. I don't have to tell you all that because you all have kids. Yeah. And I have 3 little kids too. And so they're silly. They're very silly about private parts. That's age appropriate and normal. But if you use kind of the silly words, the wingy wangy words, as we call them, you're kind of enhancing that silliness. But if you only refer to those parts as kind of like private parts, or we kind of, whistle around, or don't do it. We're kind of enhancing some shame or creating shame that they may not have known of. Like, okay, well, I guess that's the bad part, or I guess I can't talk about that part. Yeah. Or that's off limits to talk to my parents about that, or whatever. And so we want to meet them right in the middle, and we want to be no silliness and no shame, and we want to be medical and respectful with those words. And that's where, back to the video thing. In a weird twist of fates, as a job, I now talk about penises and vaginas on Instagram a lot. But I also think the Lord works in mysterious ways. But I do think it's helpful for parents to hear tone of voice, because what that delivers is it kind of an is what it is attitude. Yeah. And let the kids know that it's just a body part. It's private, and this is what private means. But really, one of the most important things, and we do talk about this in the course, but I think this is a little bit of a jarring fact for some parents that are thinking, that might be listening right now and thinking, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could say those words. Eek. But if you start bringing into the issue of safety and safety against sexual abuse, then parents can typically get on board. So if you speak to any sexual abuse expert, they will tell you the number one thing that we can do as parents is to use these anatomically correct words and to make it very clear that they're private. And again, back to this drip, drip, drip strategy, this is not everybody come sit down. Mom and Dad want to talk to you about your private parts. Okay, I mean, that is just...
Why is Dad sweating so much?
Yeah, exactly. Mom has a rash all over. But what in the bathtub, I mean, it makes, because of the topic, it seems so unusual. Mm-hmm. But in every other thing is with parenting, anything that's important to us as parents, like you think about your faith. That's something you want to instill to your children. That's not a one-time conversation at 13. You start with the Bible stories. You start with songs. You start with things. You talk about it when they're tucking them in. You talk about it when you're walking. Like, we would like our children to have a healthy understanding of sex. If we believe it's a positive thing, then we want to help them have a healthy understanding of it. And so little bitty conversations in the bathtub. Oh, yep, sweetheart, that's your penis. That's a private part. Hey, guys, cut it out. We never touch people's private parts. If y'all are going to keep messing around, somebody's got to get out first. Some little conversations. Because ultimately, we are just trying to establish that this is not a taboo topic in our home.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. It's sort of, and stay with me, it's sort of akin to my wife grew up and her parents would have wine at dinner, like all through her life, and never got drunk, just would enjoy like a beer, wine at dinner, or watching a football game or something. And so Annie growing up, that to her was this very known, safe thing. She knew she couldn't do it, but she knew like you can do this in a context that's totally fine. And so talking to her, like high school, that was not a draw because it was like, well, it's just beer. Dad has those.
It's something parents do.
It's something parents do. That's exactly right. And so I think there is this kind of nice similarity to this in that way, that it's like the more that you can make it something that's talked about, that's known, it's not sort of this, ooh, what's back there? What's locked in the cabinets over there? And, oh, that's Dad's, liquor. And it's like, ooh. But the more it's kind of like, hey, this is what these things are. This is anatomically their names. This is, everybody's got some version of this. And it's a little like, oh, okay, that's just what that is. It's not this sort of like taboo hidden behind thing that certain personalities are going to get really curious about, or some get shamed about.
Right. That's a great comparison.
Analogy.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I did.
Well
here.
done, Dave.
The thing that I did want to ask about that space is how do you guys think about? This was like one of my big questions, which I think you may have even addressed, but I'd love to hear you speak on in the podcast. It's like when you think about your kids, like we have 3 kids, that from 12 to 7 right now. And, they're very different personalities. So it's funny because you think about a first child like me, and my first child, he's very dutiful. So if you tell him don't do it, he's like, gotcha, that's bad, I won't do it. And obviously he fudges there. But that's, you get into the other 2 and they're a little more curious. They're a little more, you have to watch them a little more. And I'm like, so the thing that, as John and I were talking this morning, I was like, how do you guys think about, you want to initiate these conversations, right? I think that's what to me feels so, we have David Thomas and Sissy Goff on all the time. And this is something that they really, same as y'all, they really expound, which is this idea that like, you want to be the expert. Mm-hmm. And that means you need to lead this. Like you can't respond. I mean, you can respond, but you want to be ahead of this. You want to show them like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Come talk to me about it. Not Ralph, the guy that you said next on the bus, Ralph, who smokes and has a mustache.
Well, and you guys said this 12. In the course that everything that we as parents talk to our kids about, we are empowering them for when they're in that situation.
That's
they're
right.
Not like,
but like, how do you, when you think about initiating, when you think about the age to do that, which y'all talk about so well, it's such a young age, and just again the drip, drip, drip idea. But like, I was running this through my brain, and I was like, okay, we've had this conversation with each of them in some version, but I have to like knowing that they're each different really matters, because one of our 3 is extremely curious, and I could just see that little brain going like, and then I'm like, oh boy. So how do y'all manage that when it comes to children, not just children, but the same set of children? They're your children, but they're very different. And yeah, I'd just love to have many more questions of it out there with that.
Well, you're right. Like you have children who, if you say, sweetheart, the oven is hot, right over here, the stove is hot, there's something hot on the stove, so don't touch it. You have the child that will not touch it.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah.
You have the child go, I wonder exactly how hot that is.
Yeah.
Right.
And they will reach over, burn their hand, and they're going to experiment. They're going to try. They're going to test the boundaries. They don't think that applies to them, all of that. And so what we have to know is we can only do what we can do as parents. In other words, but what would be a really sad thing is if your child touched the stove and you never told them.
Yeah.
So with some of your kids, it's going to be a simple look, a simple conversation. They will get it. They're locked in. They're like, I understand this, Daddy. For some children, you will have to reinforce that. You will have to say somewhere along the lines when they're older, to the idea, the decision to have sex is a really adult decision. How do adults make decisions? Let's talk about those decisions. Like, how do we decide what does an adult do? An adult buys a house. They just don't drive by a house and say, that's a cute one. They have to think, what do I have to pay today? And what will I have to pay?
That's a great analogy.
For the next 20 years. And so you can't enter into an adult activity and make an adult decision without considering the cost. And that's and sex is an adult, in our family we say is part of a covenant marriage. But so that's where some of your children are going to get it, and they're going to understand innately how this is intended to be. But others are going to need more conversations, more illustrations, and they still may not exactly buy into it. You have to know that. You have to pray for them a lot. But the harm would come in your parent, or what we want to encourage parents to do is to at least warn them, or at least show them, or at least go after them on this. I know you don't want to wear your seatbelt. We have to wear our seatbelts. That's the child they're just going to try every rule and try to break it. So you will have done that so many other times on so many other topics with this child that you'll start looking for ways to talk about that.
And I think too, taking it back a little bit to younger kids, I think personalities, I have some kids my oldest is a girl. And so we've had so many conversations about this, and it's just like, I'm checking these boxes like, oh, I'm doing a pretty good job at this. And then my middle is a boy, and I'm like, they're just a year apart. And so I think sometimes like, oh my gosh, I haven't covered any of this because he's not asking these questions.
Yeah.
And so what comes so easy with my daughter and I, I'm covering all these things. And then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's just a year behind, and we haven't talked about any of this. And so for some kids, they're really curious, and they're going to ask all these questions. Well, where do babies come from? How do they know it's a boy? And like all these great questions, and we're just going to be following along. And then I have another kid with a different personality who's not really asking many questions.
Yeah.
So for a kid like that, I have to be more proactive. Yeah. And that's something we really encourage parents to be, is to say, okay, this is the information I want my child to have. How can I move towards them with this information? So for my son, one of my sons, I might be like, hey, have you ever wondered? And that's a phrase we like to use a lot. Have you ever wondered, how that baby got out of there? Because we just saw her at school last week, and she was out to here. Have you ever wondered how the baby was born? Well, I am going to tell you, and it's amazing. Yeah. And we're in the car, and you can't get out. So
nor can I
navigate personalities with that, because some kids are like, oh, but we do joke of like the phrase, have you ever wondered? It's really great for
great.
Quieter kids, but don't overuse it, because then they're like, have you ever wondered? No, Mom, no, I've never wondered. No.
Yeah. I've never wondered about anything in my life.
But just be mindful of the personalities, but also that just because they're not asking doesn't mean they're not inwardly curious. And so that's what we want to remind parents of.
That's a great word.
Move towards them with that information, and they might be like I said before, like with my daughter, she's asking all these questions, and we're having all these organic conversations. That might happen with some of your kids, but then it might not. But don't sleep on these conversations just because they're not leading them. We as the parents need to be the proactive leaders of these conversations.
Yeah. You brought up a great point in the course about those 2 6-year-old boys. You were like,
oh, I love
the youngest.
That was great.
And the oldest. I think that would be a great thing for you guys to talk about for a minute, because that really blew my mind.
Mm-hmm. So I think any parent with more than one child will totally relate to this. And so what we say is your family is the age of your oldest child.
God, that's so good, by the way. I wrote that down. That is so good. So good.
So what that means is, and this is so apparent for any parent, intended, okay, so like you have this little firstborn child and you follow all the rules and all these things. And, like, for example, that firstborn child's like, well, we don't do screen time until 2, because that's what the pediatrician says. And it's like, we're all nodding like, oh, of course. Why would you ever do that? Well, then that second baby comes, and that newborn is sitting in front of the TV to watch Daniel Tiger or something. Well, you can take a shower. It's like the rules go out the window. And then God bless the thirdborns or 4th or 5th, because they are living in that world. And so what I think is important for parents to realize is that reality, that your family is the age of your oldest child. So the question we get all the time, or the question that quickly follows talking to your kids about sex, is when. Mm-hmm. When is the best time? What's the perfect age? Because I don't want to do it too early. I don't want to do it too late. Like, when's that perfect age? And so we really gently turn parents to see that not every 6-year-old is the same. Like a firstborn 6-year-old is going to the museums around town, and they're going to the zoo, and they're going to the pumpkin patches, and they have an early bedtime and a bath every night, and they're reading lovely books. And like, their life is 6, and they live in this precious 6-year-old world. And then this thirdborn comes along, and this resonated so true to me in these recent years, because my thirdborn is an animal, because he is just along for the ride. I mean, he goes to bed late. He watches TV shows I'm embarrassed to tell you about. He plays Nintendo really well. Like, he is a thirdborn, and the songs he requests in the car, I'm just like, oh gosh, how'd you know this? It's because he is living in an 11-year-old world. Yeah. And so he is in the home. He's at the dinner table. He's hearing these conversations. He's listening to these songs. He's around their friends. So for someone to say, "Oh, I would never tell my 6-year-old that," it's like, well, have you met my 6-year-old? Because
yeah.
My 6-year-old's going to tell your 6-year-old at school.
Exactly, because then my 6-year-old, and that's I always resonate with the firstborn in that story. And now that my kids are getting older, I'm looking at my thirdborn who just finished his kindergarten year, and I thought nobody should go play with him because he knows
things
too much, and he will tell anybody anything. And so the reality is, if I told everyone, okay, you know what? Age 6 is perfect or whatever. Well, this darling 6-year-old girl who was raised in a little firstborn home and she's doing all these sweet little things, and she sits next to my 6-year-old in kindergarten, it's like, well, she's going to learn a lot more than she bargained for. So we really encourage parents to keep that in mind as you start thinking when is the perfect time, and really encourage parents to kind of think of a different question, and that is who. Who do you want to tell them? Who do you want to have that power as a first impression? Yeah. And to really have that question drive your conversations instead of this kind of ticking time bomb of when. Really think about it as like, well, who do I want to help shape this understanding for them?
Well, you said it, that the illustration is so great in the video of the bus where it's like, they're sitting together, and your firstborn 6-year-old this is my son to it. He's just the sweetest little smiling, and just everybody loves me, and the world is this. And, but he's sitting next to a fourth child, 6-year-old, who's like, smoking and like got a prison tat, and so you're like, they're going to have a very different conversation. And I just love that. That was very illuminating to me. Is like, oh yeah, this one, your family is the age of your oldest child, but two, these younger children are growing up just in such different environments to what, if I think of every child like my eldest child, I'm in trouble because that's not their lives, and I thought that was extremely.
You walk into the classroom and you see all these other 8-year-olds, but some of them are camouflaged. There's no way that's an 8-year-old, like my 8-year-old. They're not coming from the same place, and they don't have the same body of information.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so what's the next? We kind of hijacked you guys. What's the next phase in the course here?
Oh yeah, so you want to create your family message to be proactive. You want to use the words penis and vagina without falling over, and then the next one we talk about is the story of birth. And this is really practical because it's typically one of the first questions a kid will ask is, how's my baby brother going to get out? Or how's that neighbor going to have that baby? They're kind of problem solvers. And so young kids are looking at these pregnant people in their lives thinking, how's that going to work? And so they just want to figure it out. And so we really encourage parents to tell them and to use words like birth canal, vagina, uterus. I think some parents are like, okay, I can handle fetus, vagina, but uterus, I don't know if I can say that word. And you two are awfully quiet for your personality.
Sorry,
but,
I got lost in thought.
I'm going to carry on. But you can use the word womb. We offer that up too as a lovely biblical suggestion.
There's no womb in the end.
Yeah, womb. Exactly. But what we really wanted to do is clear the air. Babies are not tummies. They're in a special place called the uterus.
I love that you guys are like, so that is like a big thing. Like there's no tummy babies.
There's no.
Yeah.
If we take them out of the digestive system and put them back in the
there you go. There you go.
And that's a great example where I think what I hope people hear when they watch our course is that there's so much grace in these conversations. And the ultimate goal is this big picture of trust and communication and a healthy understanding of sex. Yeah. What I don't want is for parents to listen to this course and then they're in the kitchen and their little brother, the 4-year-old's talking about, Mommy, your tummy. No, it's a uterus. It's called uterus.
Right.
It's like, I think sometimes parents are so literal these days where they're like, tell me what to say and when do I say it? And like they are
that's true.
And so I want to be really careful that we present that this is a holistic approach and this is a comprehensive communication pattern we're setting you on. This is not like this. Because I think some people are like, no. I said it's a tummy. I mean, it's not a tummy, it's a uterus. I'm like, okay, that's correct. But if your child, if they just know the word uterus, that's fine. You know, and they still say tummy, that's okay too. So I don't want people to get lost in the weeds here on some of these conversations. But the point of telling them the story of birth is to really help them see how amazing this is and how our bodies were designed to do this. And there is a special place just for babies called a uterus. And the baby does come out the birth canal and the baby does come out the vagina. And this is a miracle and it's amazing. Or sometimes the babies wiggle and can't go down that way. So the doctor lifts them out and that's called a cesarean section. So all these things you're doing is hopefully two things. One, wowing your child So I'm pretty sure that's not what they thought you were going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is we really want parents to establish themselves as the expert.
Yeah.
Because in that conversation, you probably blew their minds. That's probably not what they were thinking. And they probably heard a lot of words that they've never heard before. And so they are thinking, wow, my mom or my dads can actually say every single thing we just said.
Mm-hmm.
And so, wow, mom and dad know everything about babies.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the position that we want to hold with these young kids. Because what's really important to remember when you start engaging in these conversations when kids are young is when kids are little, they are curious. They are asking questions. They are asking us questions. Little kids come to mom and dad, and little kids believe mom and dad. And all of that stuff kind of starts to change a bit when kids get older. And so we really want to take advantage of these younger years of curious little minds that are soaking up all this information and are coming to us and believing what we say and really establish this pattern, like I've said before, of trust and communication, because it is really just kind of sets us up for so many more future conversations.
Yeah.
And again, it also gives you that confidence as a parent to realize, okay, I just said birth canal and nobody fell over, like we can do this. Because we also give parents a lot of encouragement that talking about how that baby got out is 1,000 times easier than talking about how that baby gets in.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor and kind of get your feet wet and start saying some of those words and realize I can do it. Kids, when they're young, everything's pretty matter of fact. So it might be kind of weird or, that's weird, but it's very matter of fact. And so we just want to
not hormonally charged.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to wake you.
I was just falling asleep. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, of course.
Methodical coffee, it's kind of the best part of my morning.
Oh.
I mean, don't tell my wife and my kids.
John, I don't want to sound too bold.
Yeah.
And same, I don't want to be held accountable for saying this, but it's one of the things that makes life so beautiful and worth living. I mean, does that feel too heavy?
It's very heavy, but it's true. Methodical coffee has craft coffee and tea for people of all kinds.
All kinds.
Roasted, blended, brewed, served, and perfected by verified coffee and tea aficionados like moi.
That's exactly right. And Methodical has resolved the headache of having too little or too much coffee from your traditional time-based coffee subscription.
Yeah,
with
that's
Methodical,
yesterday.
Yeah. You can subscribe by usage.
Yeah, get into the future, people. Receive a free smart scale. It's not just a scale.
It's a dumb scale.
Dumb scale.
Get rid of your throw all your dumb scales away.
This is a smart scale, and it's free, people.
Scale.
It tracks your coffee consumption and triggers your next order at the perfect time.
Yeah.
So you always have just the right amount of coffee on hand, worry-free.
This is David at Methodical told me this, John. The scale registered for Harvard and got in. That's how smart it is. And
Summa cum laude.
You know what the best part is?
What?
You can receive 20% off your first bag and 10% off all subsequent bags with no code needed when you try the free smart scale, the Harvard scale.
That's Dave, as you know, because I've told you time and time again, we also have our very own dad blend, right?
And you don't have to be smart for that. It's for people of any kind of IQ.
Any grades that you're getting out there. You can drink this coffee. It's filled with hints of chocolate, graham, brown sugar, and shame. It gets me going every morning.
Methodical is on a mission to connect people to the beauty of life through coffee experiences for people like you. Guess what they've been doing since 2015?
They've been roasting and
it's the old roast and host.
On their site, you'll also find brew guides that teach you how to turn your coffee brewing chore, it's not a chore, into a beloved ritual. Receive 20% off your first bag and 10% off all subsequent bags, which are all the bags that come after that for those of you who didn't go to Harvard. No code needed.
Craft a cup you'll love with Methodical coffee. No IQ required.
That's one thing that I have to remind myself of, like as a 41-year-old man, I've got 41 years of information and baggage or whatever attached to some of these things. And my 8-year-old doesn't have that, Right. I mean, I do think that, I've learned one thing that I would say to other parents is like, everything happens before you think that it should happen, So she's got more information than, maybe my sweet little naive mind would want her to have, but they don't have the sexual side of it attached to it yet. And I think that's probably the number one hurdle for parents is we're gonna talk about. That's maybe why we try to use different terms and not use the anatomically correct terms, because there's a sexual element attached to it. But we got to remind ourselves for our kids that that's not there. They're just seeing this part that's obviously part of life, you know.
Exactly. And one of the fears I think especially people in the faith community have is they will say, I don't want to ruin their innocence.
Right.
I don't want to take away their innocence at too young of an age. But what we have to remember is ignorance is not the same as innocence.
Yeah.
Like innocence is more of an attitude. Like you can have an innocent understanding of the beauty of God's design and you have a lot of information. Information in and of itself presented in the right way is not taking away their innocence. It's actually protecting their innocence. Yeah. Because otherwise, I don't know if you, that goes along with filling the sponge. The idea of the fact that in your child's mind, there's a sponge about curiosity. Like if there was a sponge, it would be labeled curiosity about sexual things. What are we putting into that sponge? If there's nothing in that sponge, then your child is vulnerable to whatever it absorbs in the world. But if you fill their sponge, it's a full sponge, not in one moment, but in drip, drip, drip. Then when another message that you don't agree with comes along, it kind of rolls off.
Yeah.
It doesn't sink in there as deeply. So we have to flip that idea of if they know something, if they know it in the right way, it's actually protecting their innocence instead of, because otherwise they're just exposed because they have nothing.
Yeah.
So it is important how you present it, but we are on this side of puberty and they are on the other side of it.
Right.
And so presenting this as simply factual information and a part of God's design and presenting it in a matter-of-fact, not spooky, scary, secretive way is really their best protection.
You know, it's funny, and John is speaking to this, and I think you guys may even address this, but one of the things that has been so helpful for me to learn, and I would imagine it is paramount in this kind of conversation, is what John was sort of saying is like, you have to be careful. David and Sissy preach this so much. Like when your child is asking a question, be careful. Like you actually talk about this in the course, like asking another question back, because what I think we can get in trouble with is you go, okay, you just asked about, buckle up, give me the pen. All right, here we go. And when all they may be asking is this super innocent, naive question that has a really appropriate, naive, innocent answer. And I think like David and Sissy are always like, you know, when you have these sort of what feel like catastrophic questions from your kids, you want to answer with the appropriate depth and weight, when it may be like, oh no, that's not what I was asking you.
Well, and a lot of times like they ask a question and you think, oh, so they're also asking these other questions. And they're just asking that one question.
That one question. And so I think what's helpful about y'all's,
yeah.
And well, just the vocabulary y'all have helps that so much, because it, again, you know, I think especially when you're trying to be like a good parent, you're like, well, here it is. We're here. We've reached the summit. I have practiced for this. And here we go. When really they're just asking there's some joke a friend of mine has that happened with his kids where they asked a certain word and he answered and they meant the other version of that, and he just was like, I can't believe I just did that. And they were like, what does that mean, Daddy? And I was like, nothing. You know,
one of my children said, Mom, what does sex mean? And she was really, really young. And I said, that's a great question, sweetheart. I'm so glad you asked, but can I ask where you heard that word? And she said, yes. And I was expecting our third. And she said, someone asked if you know the sex of the child.
That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly what I mean.
And I said, oh, well, sex can identify male or female. You're either born with, and you know, I did take that opportunity to say how we'll know. And, you know, I blew this child's mind because I said, believe it or not, a child, when they're born naked.
Oh my God. But you just nailed exactly what I'm saying. It's like your wisdom to then ask a question before. That's Dave and Sissy's thing. Like maybe ask one more question. Like, well, what's making you ask that question? And you realize the context is nothing what you thought. And you're like, man, if I had not asked that question, we could have had a really long, awkward, potentially interesting talk. Okay, so next y'all have reproduction, which, all of these are just, I'm so glad y'all are walking through this and not me.
Oh, you can walk through it too. So reproduction is, we want to talk about seeds and eggs. And so this is a great example to kind of go back to what you said at the beginning, where we're talking about reproduction in all living things. So we're talking about how seeds make new life. We can plant flowers in the backyard, or the pumpkin seeds inside the pumpkin. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that these teeny tiny pumpkin seeds make new pumpkins, or whatever. Watermelon, that's more seasonal. But we're just helping cultivate a fascination with the way things grow. But to your point, we're not saying the word sperm. That can come later, because kids don't have any understanding of what that word is.
Yeah.
Okay. Not only is it more difficult for parents to say, it's also, there's nothing that there's no reference for a child.
There's no context.
But if we talk about seeds and we don't even get into human reproduction for the first several years, we're helping them create this understanding that seeds make new life, that eggs make new life. Talking about the chicken coop, or talking about, all these things, you're kind of just helping them see that there's reproduction in all living things all around. And I think it kind of helps them have more of a factual understanding of the way things reproduce, and not make it this sensual kind of adding the dangers and pleasures to it, because that comes much later when it's more developmentally appropriate. But for reproduction, we really just want parents to kind of focus on seeds and eggs, and how new life comes from seeds and eggs.
So then how do y'all do that with conception? The next, that was the one I didn't get to, and which is funny because you look at the time of it, you obviously spend more time there than all the rest of them. But what is that? Walk us through that.
Well, we get the most questions about that.
I'm sure.
So, mommy, daddy, how did that baby get in there?
Yeah.
And by the way, we do tell parents it's a good idea to maybe have Dave and I were so afraid of that question that we decided we needed a pre-designated opening line and a pre-designated facial expression.
Oh yeah.
Because otherwise they weren't going to get, they were going to get a scream and a run out of the room. So we decided it would be, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. And we were going to say that with a smile. So that's what we tried to, give parents. Actually, it's a stalling device for just a moment too. So it gives you a minute. But what we decided was that you do not need to go into the dangers or the pleasures of sexual intercourse. We're just going to take the basic biology. Now, if it's a very, very young child, then you're going to even take less. So let's give the very first. Let's say, instead of dropping the big book of sex right on their head, you're just going to open the book and introduce the characters. Okay? So, sweetheart, it's pretty amazing, but by God's design, a husband and a wife were made to fit together in a very special way. There's a seed that's deep inside of the husband, and there's an egg that's deep inside of the wife. When that seed and the egg meet, then that's what God uses to make the baby. And you can stop there.
I feel like I learned something.
Okay.
Yeah. I am writing vigorous notes.
If you notice, my answer lined up. So you take the basic biology, but you also take that message. Like, what was that message again? Sex is a gift from God intended for marriage. So instead of saying man and wife, I'm going to say instead of saying man and woman, I'm going to say husband and wife. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to introduce God. I'm going to make it sound and appeal to the side that this is a blessing. This is a gift from God. And so a husband and a wife. So we've just introduced for our family, God, a husband, a wife, a seed, an egg, a baby.
And those are the characters.
And those are the characters.
And I think, again, to repeat what we've kind of said over and over again, is that's a great first answer.
Mm-hmm.
You can confidently close the book and put it away.
Yeah.
And know, as a parent, that's not my only time.
Yeah.
Talk about this.
Right. Yeah.
So I think this shift of, I have to tell them everything in this one big talk, and I got my books, and I'm going to talk about anatomy and periods and sex and everything all at once. Like, that is a lot.
Yeah.
But we know this, little 7-year-old wants to know, and we gave them, and we introduced the characters for our family story, then that's perfect. And we can close that and realize I'm going to go back later. So they don't have to understand every single thing I want them to know about sex.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's overwhelming for them and a lot on us. And so we can say what Mary Flo just said and feel like that was pretty good.
So then how do y'all navigate the older version of that?
Well, that's that next question. Okay, help me understand. What did you mean fits together in a special way? Okay, great question. I am so glad you asked.
I'm pretty sure that's a Marvin Gaye lyric, by the way. Fit together in a special way.
But, sweetheart, do you remember how I said there was a seed that's deep inside of the daddy and an egg deep inside? You remember that part? Yes, I remember that part. Okay, well, what happens is this. The husband places his penis inside of the wife's vagina. Not the easiest sentence in the world.
I wish I could see facial expression.
I know. And then the seed travels through the penis and meets with the egg that's deep inside of the mommy. And those are the two pieces that God uses to start the baby.
Well, that's great.
You explain it mechanically.
Gosh, that is.
Yeah.
You keep it simple. That I think you want to keep your tone of voice very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And you want to keep it with the basic biology. These are just kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes parents get hung up on this idea that this is a beautiful thing and this is a great thing. We respect this. Mm-hmm. And they so lovingly tell their child about it, and their child says, "Ew."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we really encourage parents to meet their child in that age appropriate response.
Yeah.
A kid who doesn't have, first of all, that sentence that we just shared, talking about penises and vaginas and how they fit together, that is difficult for parents to say because, I think one of you said this earlier, when we talk about this, it brings up a whole bunch of stuff for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe things we learned in the church that maybe aren't accurate anymore, or we don't believe in, or baggage that we have, or issues, or things that experiences. There's a lot of brokenness that can come with this topic. And so what we have to remember, though, is if what we are telling to our kids, particularly when it's just basic biology, and that's about as simple as it gets. If we just share the basic biology, they're not hearing anything but the facts, right? They are not sensual beings. They are not thinking about the dangers or the pleasures. They're not thinking about all this other stuff that we are as parents. And so we have to realize their response of, ew, gross, that's pretty age appropriate. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So what sometimes parents can do because they want to make sure these conversations are going well is, oh, no, sweetheart, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. Because okay, well, that's confusing, right? So we're over here and we want to drag our child over here to our understanding of it and say, oh, you just wait. You won't always think that. It is so beautiful. It's okay, well, that is very confusing. Yeah. For the child to hear. And so we kind of encourage parents to expect that answer because in their minds, that doesn't make sense. And that does seem gross. Mm-hmm. And so to kind of affirm that age appropriate response, say, oh, I can totally see why you would think that. It's not for kids. It's just for adults.
Yeah. Well, it's something that really, I think of the things that, as I watched the videos that really was interesting to me is how much intention y'all give and thought y'all give to how you say things. Because at first I was like, that's a little overbearing, but immediately I was like, no, this affected me because when I was talking to one of our kids about it, the questions that came, I was really unprepared for, and I had to not laugh. Because it was hysterical to me. I mean, these questions were unbelievable. And then it's I'm also just giggling myself because, at one point I think one of mine was but how does the seed get over there? And I was like, that's so friction is this thing that's really interesting that God, but you're just sitting, and so it really matters. You want to, because they are reading this right here. I mean, eyes to nose to mouth, and going what is, and so it's funny because there's so much wisdom to that of really, like you said, buying yourself time, or knowing when we say it, we want to smile, or because one of my sons asked, and I was just oh, I want to use these in a stand-up show so bad because it was just wonderful. But at the same time, I'm he's looking at me going I need an answer. And so, you don't want to make it silly, but you don't want to make him feel shame because you're laughing. And so there's a lot of wisdom to sort of prepping, literally kind of before a fight, kind of all right, here we go. Be present. think about this, know how your face looks when he's, because that's really all they have to go on. And I love the intent of that, just that y'all have thought about that, because I thought that was so interesting 2 or 3 times how you kind of keep bringing up like, okay, when we say this, we want to think about how our, because at first you're like, man, that's pretty intense. But then you realize it when you've done it, you're like, oh no, you get in these situations where like, I'm making like this, what, and they're like, what's wrong, Dad? Because that's such a big part of the information.
That you're comfortable talking about this. If you want to set the stage for future conversations when things become more hormonally charged and more complicated, you want them to know that like I can handle this conversation.
Yeah.
I am safe
underneath you are.
That's right. You're the expert.
Yeah.
You need to make your best effort to assure them that they've come to the right place, because they have a lot of other places they can go.
Right.
Yeah. And so when y'all talk, the next thing, again, continuing the conversation, that's obviously going to change as they grow, right? So when they are more able to hear grown-up thoughts, or they've interacted with it in some way, so they actually have a little bit of like, oh, this guy talked about this, and now I can think about this differently. How do you navigate that as they grow? Like, what does that look like?
Well, some of it is rinse and repeat. Some of it is, okay, you would be surprised. You've had this talk that you'll never forget. You've explained it all to your child, and it's like, whoo, I am an awesome parent. I did it.
Nailed it.
I even had an okay expression. I did it.
Yeah.
Check. 3 years later, ask your child, so how did that baby get in there? Oh, I don't know.
No.
You don't remember that moment?
You didn't write it in the calendar. Like, how did you not know that? So you have to reinforce those kind. It's like, I told you 20 years ago, Jesus loves you. You don't remember that? You have to always tell them things that are important more than once. So some of it is rinse and repeat. Some of it is add more information. Some of it is their environment is going to be different. Okay, you're going off to a summer camp now. You're going to be with a lot of older kids. There are a couple of things we haven't covered that I feel like might come up.
Oh, wow.
That's that I just don't want that to be the first time you hear it. Maybe you won't hear it there, but or I was working at the school the other day and I heard this word, and so I can tell it's up at the school, but we haven't ever talked about this. So you keep kind of staying in tune with their environment, their changing activities and what they're being exposed to, and you try to run ahead of it a little bit and check in with them. Is there like a this may be like the most simplistic Neanderthal question, but like, is there like a final conversation? Is there like and now I push your ship out to sea, Godspeed, make good decisions? Like, is that like, they're 16, 17? I mean, like, is that too late? I mean, do y'all find that there's kind of like, this is when you may have that conversation that gets really, like, okay, here's the nuts and bolts, pun intended. But like, how do you, is there that one that's kind of like we're really talking about it now? We do encourage those pretty heavier, introducing the dangers and pleasures, talking about the future, all of that with what we call the timeline. And we talk about their future and the decisions that they make now and the responsibilities that they have to take of taking care of their body and all of those things. That's a little more intense.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, if you're the kind of parent that you've been talking about this appropriately all along, then, I don't know if when you take them to college, just on that drive, you're going to be talking about a lot of things.
Yeah.
No, if you would say a good idea, just a good operating procedure is leave doors open. In a second.
Well, one of the things that I really am walking away from this course with, one among other things, is empowering my girls. Like I and this is a slightly different way than I've ever thought about it before, but like thinking of how they're going to feel in X circumstance whenever they're hanging with their friends at a sleepover and like this comes up or whatever. Like I think it's been really helpful for me as a dad to put myself in their shoes in that moment and think I want to empower them in that moment to, not feel shamed or not feel panicked and then go with the flow of the group or whatever, I just think that's one of the most helpful things that I've gotten from this course.
That's so cool.
And that's what we want. I think our goal is to empower parents we say empowered parents, empowered kids.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we want. You know, we really want parents to create this safe environment in their homes where this is not a taboo topic. This is something we can talk about. You know, it's not necessarily all about sex and, you know, penis and vagina. Mm-hmm. It's more of like body safety and body boundary. And screen safety. We didn't even talk about pornography, but talking about that, the dangers of that, how to protect against that.
Yeah.
Internal filters.
So that is something, if you don't mind, before we release you back to the heat of Dallas, because I know that's a part of y'all's. We kind of skipped it because it's session, or I guess, where is it? 4? Pause for porn. Yeah. The which sounds like a weird nonprofit, by the way. Is there, I feel like something that is, as much as anything, or I should say so much more now than obviously 10 years ago, much more 20, 30 years ago, is this idea that pornography, as y'all say so well, it's such a sex-charged culture. And I never want to sound too churchy, but I don't know that anybody would disagree with that, right? Like faith-based or not, it's everywhere. And I think pornography with kids, I mean, if there is anything you want to see me just get absolutely terrified about, it is that. And what y'all said so well is not just that they would pursue it, but that it happens to them, you know, in some way that they have no clue is happening, or even, oh my God, just like, why, you know, we can be watching a soccer game and a commercial pops up and I'm like, even here, there has to be some, you know, some movie ad, and you're like, God, it's like there's no safe place. And so, I, you know, before we end, I'd love to have y'all kind of speak to that a little bit of like, you know, something, and, you know, it's not to say girls are not going to deal with that too at all, but I know just having 2 sons, I'm like, my antenna are just constantly out for like, is there anywhere they would have seen that, interactions with that, as we think about, you know, we don't do a lot of spend the night parties, but the ones we do, they're friends that we know really well. They're dear friends of ours and vice versa. And so, you know, because that's where I get the most scared. It's just didn't mean to happen, but they're watching some fun video online and something happens. And then, you know, because once that starts, it's just, it's its own thing. It's a monster that it's just there now, you know? And so how do y'all talk to that about parents and about that to parents, and then kind of ages you're watching for things, or just what are y'all's thoughts on that space?
We have a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I would say to really start talking. And I think to sum up birds and bees, we would say, start talking, keep talking. You know, to your earlier question, like, well, how do we transition this? Like, keep talking.
Yeah.
And when they have their first boyfriend, talk about it. If they get their phone, talk about it. Hey, you know, people send pictures of their private parts. Did you know that? Well, this is why it's not appropriate. This is why it's illegal. These, you know, be a parent who's talking about these things.
Yeah. And,
you know, it's going to grow as your kids grow. But for pornography, we really encourage parents to start when their kids are young. And that phrase, again, back to the starting with seeds and not jumping into sperm.
Yeah.
Starting with the word bad pictures, the words bad pictures, and thought pornography. And just kind of creating this phrase in your home, like, we got to be really careful with what we see on screens.
Yeah.
And just like that encouraging of like, there's some really great things on these, my TV's behind me, but there's some really great things on these screens, but there are also going to be some bad things. We got to be really careful with what we see. Where, you know, a bad picture can kind of give you that pit in your tummy. A bad picture can be something that's kind of scary to look at and makes you want to look away. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, a bad picture is a picture of someone's private parts. Remember, we never look at somebody else's private parts. And so you're just kind of, again, and that's not a phrase that you say one time.
Yeah.
That is something that you're saying when they go over to the cousin's house.
Yeah.
And there's not as much supervision and there's an iPad floating around. Like, we just have to be more mindful of these things with our kids because it's so prevalent. And to what Mary Flo said earlier is there are all these external filters that are wonderful, and we encourage parents to figure them out. And I'm trying to navigate all those as we're starting this new tween world that I'm in. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing we can do as parents is create internal filters. And that's the greatest thing that we can protect them as parents, because you could have everything teed up on your devices. You could have all these things and follow all the people, whatever. But then a friend, you know, says, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, boom, done. So I think what we want to do is create internal filters with their kids so they know, hey, this stuff is out there. It's not healthy for your brain or body to see this. If you see this, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to stop, run, and tell, or whatever your action plan is. And then kind of layering it in with phrases of, just because you saw a bad picture doesn't mean you're a bad person. Because what we don't want to do with this horrific, dark world of pornography is the devil loves the darkness. And so what he wants is for us to just stay in this dark secret and shame. And it's, bad, I can't get out of this. I can't tell my mom I saw this. I'm kind of curious about what that was. And so I actually looked at it again because I don't know what I just saw. I mean, we're wired to be like that. We are curious people. And so we're playing with fire. And so I think as parents to throw a life raft and to turn the lights on and essentially say, hey, this is out there. It is very dangerous. But if you see something bad, you're not a bad person. But come and tell me. Because, the isolation and the secrets, that's when things can become a really bad problem. And so we're not pretending to think that these conversations takes porn away. Like, that's not true. But I think it takes away the power and the hold that it can have. And then obviously you're not going to be talking to your 15-year-old about bad pictures. You're going to be using the word pornography and talking about sending nudes or whatever the phrase is. These conversations all build. But they have to start somewhere. And so because our kids are little and they're in the sex saturated culture and they are around technology, now maybe you're listening and thinking we're a screen-free family. That's great. But for pretty much everybody else, they're watching some show or they're on your phone for a second while you're in the waiting room, or there is some way that they're around screens. And I think it's tempting as parents, particularly sweet parents or nice parents or Christian parents or whatever, to think, oh, not me. It's such an heat topic and so dark that it's just tempting to stick your head in the sand and kind of think, we're good people. We're not going to deal with that.
I was at the neighborhood swimming pool the other day and watching my grandchildren. And there were like 4 or 5 darling middle school boys, clean cut, cute, fun, happy, goofy. But one of them had a phone. But there was just one phone, but they were all on it. They were, they weren't even playing in the water anymore. Like it's so compelling. And that's what parents don't realize. Your child may not have a phone, but he is next to someone who has a phone, and I can't always be there. So I want you to know and give them, like you were saying, at a sleepover or something. If something happens, literally turn away. What would that look like? Almost, what would you say? Give them a deck of cards to teach them a card trick. They have, just let them learn to do something else, to have a diversion, have a passcode for you on their little gizmo that they say, I'm not feeling well. That was ours. Oh,
that's great.
Say, Mom, I'm not feeling well. I'm not going to say, give Mrs. Wilson the phone. Let me see. I'm not going to question you. That's our password.
That's
because
great.
We're not feeling well about the situation. And so I'm there. I don't ask.
Wow.
What happened? I said, I understand. I'll be right there.
Wow.
And she's not feeling well. We're going home. Thank you. We had a great time. And when that happened a couple of times, I was kind of quiet in the car till they were ready to tell me what they weren't feeling well about.
Wow.
But they know they've got an out, and I'm going to respect that little bag.
It feels like a sadness to accept, but it kind of feels smart, especially in this day and age. And I completely agree, Dave, with what you were saying. Like, I don't think anyone would disagree that we're just in a sex-charged world, but it feels like there's a sadness to accepting the inevitable that this is going to happen. I mean, I think we should act. We should do everything that we can to prevent my daughters from seeing pornography, but it's probably going to happen. So to be prepared for it,
Yeah. Well, and two, again, and let me say this as we conclude. I'm just so thankful for y'all and the work you're doing, because I think something that's so beautiful and profound about this is your temptation, as y'all just said. I think if you're trying to be like good parents or faith-based family or whatever, is to kind of say like, that's not us and we're doing. But what happens when you do that is you sort of place yourself in this far off thing that when it does happen, your kid goes, I can't bridge the gap. Like, this is clean cut thing happened over here, and now I feel this way, and that's not jiving with that space. And I think when instead you can make it this, which again is so much of what y'all are teaching and encouraging, is when you have a vernacular for it, when you have a language for it, then your kid goes, oh my gosh, this is what they told me was going to happen. Right. I feel this. Hey, Dad, remember when you told me I was going to feel that thing while I was over at, Crazy Carl's, and he showed me the thing, and I feel it. And you go, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
And so I thank y'all for doing the work. It's beautiful, wonderful things. And for the people listening, I want to make sure everybody knows. Tell people where everybody can find y'all and the course and where they can get all that info.
So you can find our online course is at birds-bees.com. And the online course takes just a little over an hour. So it's very, it's broken off.
And it's super concise too, which is so great. It's really, really well done.
Dads, because we are in Dadville. Obviously, as two moms, we reach a bunch of moms.
Yeah.
But we cannot stress enough the importance of fathers in these conversations. And your sound bites might sound different than what the moms say, but find your voice and start talking.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Our hope with dads is that this would be empowering for you too, to realize you have a role in these conversations. So dive in.
Yeah.
Huge.
And then you can follow us on Instagram. We are birds__bees.
Yeah. I have to tell you, and I feel like this is a great way to end this. I sent this to John, and it made me laugh so hard.
It was great.
On your Instagram feed. I'm just going to read this. It's one of those like really cool, colorful slides, and it just says, "Parenting is hard. I'm trying to teach my son that vagina isn't a dirty word, but he still needs to pick a different name for his hamster." I thought I was going to cry laughing at that. Well, thank y'all again so much for being on. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the work y'all are putting in. I just think it's so important, and I think it's giving such a great language and vernacular for parents who are trying to figure out how to navigate this really tricky space that can be intimidating. And so we're really thankful for y'all. So thank you for doing it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having us. Yes, this is a real treat.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Of course.